Are where we are, and so we need to just move forward, get our license, and continue to do the great work that we do here at the Salvation Army.
That's the head of the Salvation Army in Louisville telling us today that they too don't have a current homeless shelter license to operate. The 200-person shelter fell out of compliance in September and submitted a new license application just this week. This all comes after our focus team investigation first reported last week that the city's largest shelter, Wayside Christian Mission, also didn't have a shelter license. Focus team reporter Travis Breeze is here now. And Travis, how deep does this problem run, and does the city even consider it a problem? You've been getting reasons as to why the licenses don't exist from some.
The hard answer from Mayor Craig Greenberg today was that this is a problem and that any shelter that isn't in compliance needs to address it as soon as possible. But I also found several shelters without a license who say they've never faced any penalties.
We're making things, improving things as much as we can for the ladies.
Nina Mosley with Wayside Christian Mission told us last week that her shelter, the city's largest, didn't have a valid homeless shelter license for 16 months.
Because of the amount of renovation going on right now, we are not current.
Mosley has reapplied and expects their license to be granted soon. In a new email Wednesday, she says all their required inspections have happened or have been scheduled. As I investigated further, I found Wayside is not the only one with this issue.
With the recent media attention about license for shelters, it caused us to pull out our file and see where we were in our compliance and our license, and we realized that our license had lapsed.
Major Mark Hunter with the Salvation Army says their 200-person shelter hasn't had a license for about 5 months. He says due to some internal staffing changes, they didn't notice.
The lady that used to take care of that, she retired, and so I think during that transition of her retiring, that task just did not get handed off.
The city's website for shelter licenses says operating such facilities without a license is strictly prohibited. When you reached out to Codes and Regulations, did they say, we have to fine you? Or did they say there would be any penalty?
They were very gracious to say, yes, we need to get your application started. So we have not had any communications about any penalties or fines.
Salvation Army reapplied on Tuesday. Volunteers of America's 23-person Unity House shelter hasn't had a license since 2021. They say it's because they needed to gather funding to fix an outdated sprinkler system and exit routes. They also said the city enabled us to continue serving families in need as we worked to secure funding and begin construction. A spokesperson says they cannot reapply until construction is finished in March. Of the shelters we investigated, only St. Vincent de Paul's Ozanam Inn had a valid shelter license. We brought this up to Mayor Craig Greenberg at a morning press conference on affordable housing. Do you think Codes and Regulations is fully upholding the shelter license process?
I think that it's very important that all businesses, all organizations in our community operate with the appropriate permits, and those that don't have that should get in compliance quickly. We will help long-standing and good businesses throughout our community get in compliance, and that needs to happen.
We asked follow-up questions to Codes and Regulations, but they deferred to what the mayor said Wednesday morning.
Codes and Regulations are stretched pretty thin, and they've got pretty serious issues they're addressing every day, especially with a lot of properties in the West End.
New Metro Councilman J.P. Leininger says most of these shelters are trustworthy and have long relationships with the city, but there needs to be uniform enforcement. Shelters are scrambling right now, and it's unclear if the city's policies will change going forward.
Travis, I think he brings up a good point, because right now this is the biggest need for these shelters, and they are doing a good job bringing people out of this bitter cold. But the bottom line is you have to be licensed and regulated. Why are these licenses so important? What do they state? What do they do for our community?
Well, most of the shelters I spoke to said we still get regular fire department inspections, we still get health department inspections, but the shelter license is the one thing that outlines how many clients you're going to serve. Also, that you're going to have someone who's CPR certified on every shift. And what I've been hearing from these shelter operators is that it's just the getting every single thing in line for a shelter license. That just, they haven't been able to do that consistently, but there are still other checks and balances that are in place.
Okay, and as these shelters are now going to get their licenses, you're going to keep following it up, and we'll report back to you on how that goes.
Of course.
All right, thank you very much, Travis. Let's